And welcome everyone to another edition of Magic Pod Squad, brought to you by Kia, official vehicle of the Orlando Magic, the final Magic Pod Squad of the season. All of us are still in our same spot, and George has gone to his kids' room for the final show. It's an impressive setup. But David, I want to start with you. Please give us some historical perspective on the challenges of this season. You've covered all 32 years of Orlando Magic basketball. I have to think this was the most challenging or as challenging as any season we've ever had.
I don't think there's even a close second place. I mean, do you? I mean, Jeff, you've been around. You were in Orlando even during the time that you didn't work for the team or play for the team. And George, we've all been around a long time. But, you know, I've just got a few more years than you guys. But no. I mean, you know, the pandemic, the crazy start to the season, a late start, then the injury to Markelle and subsequent injuries and the roster makeover. Us broadcasting remotely, us doing podcasts from our, you know, bedrooms and offices and living rooms. It's just a real kids' bedrooms, as the case may be. Haven't seen the coaches and the players since March the 10th of 2020. So that's 14 months now. We haven't in person visited with Steve Clifford, his staff, or any of the players or staff that travels with the team. So no, it's there's nothing even close. Crazy year. Let's hope we don't do it again like this next year.
So even the years you were in the Western Conference doesn't even compare to all the challenges of this year.
No, that was just travel. That was just the travel issues. You know, a lot of late nights and commercial air flights. That was the challenge there. You had a lot of 4 a.m. wake up calls for 6 o'clock flights at the airport. And so not a lot of sleep that year, right, JT?
No sleep that year. You know, I was thinking, David, like I was thinking about, as you know, as difficult as the games were, like towards the end, you know, we just weren't that competitive. Just thinking about, you know, I was playing, but that first year of the Magic, when we started out 7-7, but we only won 11 games the rest of the way. That must have been tough to broadcast every night.
You know, well, on radio too, by yourself with no color commentator or studio host or anything. That was just all a one-man show. But that's not anywhere near what the difficulties we faced this season. Right. No, I don't think that was.
And I felt like things were pretty seamless for George. No challenges for you with your multiple COVID tests, everything on Zoom, technical challenges. I mean,
now he traveled, so he's got a different experience.
George was traveling, exactly.
You know, the first thing I asked Joel last night as the buzzer sounded was, okay, after tomorrow, how many more times do I have to go in to get my COVID test?
Yes, right.
And he's like, you got it. You know, so I went in today, you know, Monday the 17th, I went in and took one, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed. I mean, I don't know where this goes from here. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, you know, we get a little break from that. But COVID tests every day since November 28th. The Zoom challenges, and I just felt for you guys, like that's why I kind of bowed out on the last two pod squads, to be honest, because I felt it was important. You know, I'm with these guys every day, whether it's on the road or at the practices or at home. You guys haven't seen these guys, and I'm always reminded, because you guys or Trish Wingerson in our department, like she's like, I've not met any of these new players, and neither of you, and that would not be the norm under normal circumstances. You guys would have met them, you know, the day they got here and gotten to know them at this point. And so it's just, I mean, to say I'm glad this season's over would definitely be an understatement for me.
You know, and I think as challenging as all this was, you know, there's things that we pick up on the road, right? I mean, when we're traveling and we'll overhear a conversation, or, you know, or we'll flat out intrude on a conversation so we can find out some information. But you may see something on a bus, on a plane. We're able to go in the locker room. We're able to have a conversation. You guys can watch the game and say, why is this person wearing that? Or did you see this interaction? That was all gone. It was just so surreal. Everything that we're used to. I mean, for Brian Hill to not be able to get within, you know, 4 levels of an NBA floor. I mean, that's just not normal. That's just not normal. Those guys, crazy. Him and Quentin Richardson, Jeff Turner, you guys are used to going wherever you want to go. And you couldn't do that this year. Just so surreal.
Just the fact that you guys were meeting Wendell Carter Jr. and RJ Hampton for the first time on a podcast in
Yeah.
May was, it took me a couple of times to just think about it and just go, gosh, it's so just weird. There's no other way to describe it other than weird. It doesn't stop. And hopefully come next year, we won't have this situation and you guys will be back with the team and we'll be playing 82 games and everybody will be hanging out together again, hopefully.
And you know what's funny too, guys? I don't know if you guys felt the same way, and it's small potatoes compared to what George and the players, especially the coaches and everybody had to deal with. But you know, it was somewhere around February where we realized I haven't had a day off. You know, you miss those days in the hotel when you can just kind of, you have an off day, a Saturday in Denver, and you don't have to do anything. You can shut it down for a day.
Yeah.
When you don't go anywhere, those days are gone. You don't have those days, and it's awesome. It's great being home, but boy, we didn't really get that day to kind of recharge the batteries, did we?
No, there's always a honey-do list, right? Or something,
Yes.
pick up the kids,
Yes.
or for you, Dante, or
Yeah.
things to do when you're always at home. You're absolutely right. It was different in so many respects.
But, you know, and to be honest, guys, like from what I understand, and George, you can talk to this, travel was so different. I would have gone stir crazy being stuck in my
True.
hotel
Correct.
room for the length of time that these guys were. Listen, I like to get out and walk around, go have my coffee and do those things. So, man, that sounded like torture to me to be traveling this year, George.
I would not characterize myself as someone that like when we go out on the town or we go out on the road that I like rip it up on the road every trip. Like I would not characterize myself
No,
that way.
right.
But the fact of the matter that you could not leave your room, I mean, all year. And it just like you said, when you would hear an off day, you would get excited if you're on the road. The two favorite words for me when we were on the road would be no shoot around, right? That would make my heart beat a little bit faster when I would hear no shoot around, right? Because then I knew the next day, hey guys, what are we doing? Where are we going?
Yeah, right. Sure.
And we had no shoot around on the road all season long. And it didn't mean squat. It didn't mean squat because
Right.
your day didn't change. It's like, okay, this is how my day is going to go. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to go take my test. I'm going to sit around for a couple of hours and, I'll knock some work out, but then I'm going to go get my food out of the meal room and bring it back to my room because you either can't eat with anybody else or, for whatever reason, you just, your timing doesn't work out. And then you're in your room and I've seen so many episodes of Friends and Family Guy and The Office that I couldn't, it got to the point where basketball games were coming on and I didn't even want to, I was just overloaded with, I don't know what it was, malaise, and it just sucked. It really sucked. So I've said it a couple of times as the year has gone by, you did not miss anything, not being on the road. You guys would have been miserable. And it just was not easy. It really was tough.
I think what Dante said though was right though. You said earlier about just the small interactions. I know it would have been tough and unusual, not being able to go anywhere. We wouldn't have enjoyed that at all. But still, just to be around the coaches, to be on the same level. I guess that was the red zone, right? We were yellow zoners. You were red in the red zone, so you were around the team. To be in the red zone, to have those small interactions. It's not that we spend a lot of time with the players and coaches, but just those little moments in the hotel lobby or on the bus or in the arena or watching, 2 hours before the game, you might have a word with somebody, just little things that you pick up. You get to know the guys, you get to ask them little questions. If I found something out about a player, maybe his college background or somebody that he may have grown up with, that might be a nice story on air, the opportunity to ask him about it. It takes 2 minutes, but that 2 minutes is valuable time for a broadcaster, to get those kinds of stories, that kind of information, and to take in that sort of material that you can then provide for the fans that really, I think, want that kind of stuff. So we missed out on all of that this year. Cole Anthony, you mentioned Wendell and RJ, but Cole's been with the team since November.
Right.
Yes,
those guys just 3 or 4 weeks. But I would have preferred George to have all those difficulties that you talked about, just to have those interactions with the players and the coaches.
Well, let's put it in perspective, David. David and Jeff, let's give this a perspective real quick to what you're saying. We're in Milwaukee and David uncovers that Terrence Ross is a big superhero fan and says, Dante, you should go in the locker room and see if he's got a favorite superhero, or if there's one. And then there's the birth of Human Torch that we were able to get mileage out of for years, right? I mean, that's the kind of stuff you guys are talking about. That's all gone. We couldn't do that this year.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting, and all of that is, you know, these are our personal experience, but it's not unique. Everybody in the league was kind of going through it.
Correct.
I still marvel over the fact that we learned one of the things through the year, the Indiana Pacers broadcast team put together like a little Zoom to meet and everything.
Yes.
I'll never forget Mark Boyle telling us that they hadn't even met the head coach. They had not had a face-to-face with the head coach of the basketball team because he was new. And through all this, that was, you know, that's crazy. You know, at least we can have interaction with Steve Clifford. We know him, he knows us and everything. That puts it on a different level though when you've not met in person.
Well, we played Denver, we played Boston, and we played Chicago, and we didn't get to go down there and say hi to Evan, Aaron, or Vooch.
Yeah, strange,
right? I mean, even all the which would have happened. We'd have had an interaction with them. They'd have maybe told you something that you could work into the broadcast. I mean, it was all that stuff was gone, which is why, George, you watch the games, what these guys have done, because there have been many games down 25, 30, and I'm telling Ty, we're here. Brian and I are here. Like, if we can help, if we can say anything to help kind of get them over the hump, but they didn't need it. It was amazing how you guys were able to do these broadcasts. Some of them were not very competitive. I'll give you that. Some of the games got away at the end, but you always found a way to get through it. That was remarkable to me.
I think the three of you guys and Ty Easton and Jake Chapman, for that matter, the whole broadcast crew from top to bottom, knowing let's be honest, right? Knowing what our situation has been for the last 2 months, right? Where we really are out of it, and you trade away half the guys, and you can just kind of see what direction it's going to go in for the rest of the season. Like, losing is hard enough. Like, it's hard enough on the broadcast. But you guys are just, I mean, even last night's game 72, there's nothing to play for. You know, you have two teams out there that are sitting half of their rosters. you have guys you've never seen play before. And I mean, it was a great broadcast last night. There were so many entertaining things. You had the Is This Anything was great, again, as it always is. I didn't know the 4-year stats of Is This Anything. I thought that was great. I don't know.
Worked in a bacon club. There was one more bacon club. There was one more baconism we were able to get in. I thought
JT's graphic that he didn't get any credit for until the very end with the fewest wins going into who your draft pick was the next losingest, which was a word I learned. I learned that.
But of course, David took the time to look it up, and it's a word. I mean, it's unbelievable, the research. Even that.
We don't want to see. I wrote it on my notepad, so I turned it over, and then there was a question before the game. Is this a word from the truck? They said losingest. Ty says, "Is that even a word?" I said, "Absolutely. Look it up on dictionary.com."
I mean, they always say that Popovich is the winningest.
Make sure you got your grammar right.
I think you're fine. I think you're fine. But I just,
I don't think,
you guys just top to bottom, you got, and Dante, you were good. I mean, you were okay. But like I'm just saying, like,
Dante, you didn't sink us. That's all we ask.
Everything from top to bottom was entertaining, was great. It kept the fans going, educational. It was a fabulous job by you guys, and well-deserved kudos to you.
Thanks, George. I appreciate it. Jeff and I felt like we had to bring, some extra stuff this year, because if you have a really good team, obviously the games sort of carry the broadcast. You're just along for the ride. You just kind of, try to add to the excitement level and provide a little background. And Jeff does a great job with the analysis of what's going on. But boy, when you have, I think it was maybe 15, 20 plus point blowouts this year, and just one on the other end. If you're going to try and provide an entertaining broadcast, you better bring a lot of material to the table, have a lot of stuff ready to talk about, and have some things in your mind that, might be entertaining for fans that, just don't want to sit and watch their team get their doors blown off, on a given night. So, we tried we tried to do that. We tried to do that, right, JT? We tried to bring some stuff that would be fun to talk about.
Well, I hope we did a good job. It's just
Totally, absolutely.
yeah. I just hope we don't have to go through anything like that again. It's just hard when you're not in the arena. It's we're just like the players. We feed off of energy, and a lot of it's manufactured. Although I will say, our camera crew and everybody, they were right in there with everything. So
and they were incredible. And then you think of the challenges, and you can't.
A little bit of juice too. So
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You're getting stats, your stats people, and you get people in the truck are keeping you pumped up, and it really is amazing. And there was sometimes when you win, it feels like the pregame and postgame, and even the broadcast, probably for you guys to some extent, it kind of carries you. The production meetings are easy. When you've lost 6 in a row, trying to figure out what to talk about can be very challenging. I will say that.
Absolutely.
I'll say it can be very challenging.
Jeff makes a good point about the crew around us too. It was
Absolutely.
one of the silver linings was getting to know some of these crew people better, because we were just in a room with 3 or 4 people at most, and you get to know them. You get to know what they're about, their families, and I enjoy those relationships. That's really what this job has been for me for so many years, has been about the people that you've met and the relationships that you're able to develop over time and really get to know people. So there was an addition in that regard for people that we've been around, Jeff. We know these people by face and by name, but we know them a little bit better now. So that's a good thing.
And I think a better, just speaking for myself, a better appreciation for what goes on. It's like, normally in a regular game, we arrive and doing a lot of things you guys were talking about. We're visiting with other people, and then it's like, okay, it's 6:30. I got to be on the stools. The stools are there.
Yes.
I go. Now I got to see behind the scenes, setting up, doing all those things a little bit more. So, again, for me, a better appreciation for just how hard all those guys behind the
and for us, we show up and do these games, but then a game will end, and then some of our crew is off to Tampa to do a Raptor game that night and get tested there, and then drive back and be at our crew for an early call. And then you talk to one crew member and they said, get some of these backstories like you're talking about, David. And someone said they worked with Regis Philbin for years. So you get to hear those stories. And then, our cameraman, Chris, had a baby. He's got a newborn and he's trying to juggle all this stuff. You're right. It's very fascinating. And at the end of the day, we got to spend a lot of time with some talented people that really their job, is to make that broadcast look the best they can. And Ty Eastham, it starts with him, and it all comes together. You're exactly right. Jeff, when you think about 28 players on this Magic roster that have worn a jersey and got on the court, I don't think it makes any sense to rehash the season and what happened and highs and lows. We all know what happened, right? But at the end of the day, it's going to be 28 different players wore a Magic uniform in a game, which is a record, 32 different starting lineups, which is a record, 400 games lost to injury or illness. When you think about that, right? I mean, as someone who played and can appreciate the challenges that every one of those would present, I mean, that's just staggering, is it not?
It really is. When you put them, when you lay it out, the numbers, it is amazing. And I just, it's funny. I had, as you guys know, I had the opportunity to do a little bit of coaching and everything, and we talked a little bit about this with Brian Hill last night after the final game. And, the big thing is when you're a coach, well, what you really want, what your time is on the practice floor and your guys, right? And you know who they are and you're building and everything. With the turnover, with all of the, the injuries and the number of players, that would be difficult enough, right? To continually have to reteach things. And so you're not really progressing like you want. But then you throw on top that you just don't have any time with them in the setting where you're comfortable to do that teaching on the court. You're in a ballroom and, watching some of those Inside the Magic features, late at night when I got home from doing the game. And all the times Cliff is, they're in the ballrooms. I've been there. We did ballroom walkthroughs,
right.
But not all the time. I mean, I just you cannot learn in that environment. You can't, it's almost impossible to be locked in and prepared in that, especially with a young group. So like for me, what Steve Clifford and his staff did to be able to navigate through all of that with the numbers you talked, the 28 different players and all the injuries and stuff, and to put a product on the floor that, let's undermanned a lot, but to still be somewhat organized
Absolutely.
and trying to keep them focused. I mean, I just can't tell you how much respect I have for those guys. I mean, it really is amazing. So George, I mean, like when you're on the road and you're there, you're in the room with them.
Right.
So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking there are people walking in and out, taking food out of the room, and there's just so many distractions.
Right? I mean, it's just not the same. It's just not, it's just stupid. When you think about it, the whole thing is just crazy. The happiest Cliff were the days where we actually got to practice and be on the floor. I mean, we had that last practice before we left on this trip. On this very last trip, we had that last day of practice, and he and I were walking off the floor, getting ready to go to do media. And he just says, man, he's like, it's amazing how much more. I mean, we only, and when I say practice, like at that point, it's May, we only had like 8 or 9 guys available to practice, but just the 45 minutes that we had just to do that was better than the 3 weeks prior where we got to do just nothing. And it just didn't have that. And for, like you said, Jeff, just for Cliff and the rest of the coaching staff to keep us somewhat going when we easily could have just, packed it in a long time ago and just said, just roll the ball out and let him go play. Cliff and the coaches did not do. I mean, even when Cliff had COVID and he was out, we still were as organized as we Ty Corbin kept everything going and the assistants kept everything going. And just to keep everybody organized, as opposed to just showing up when the ball, showing up what it said on the schedule, throwing the ball up, let the ball just roll around and we'll finish the game and we'll go home and we'll go on to the next one. Like coaches did not do that. They were amazing. They were amazing.
You're muted.
That practice you mentioned before the last road trip, George, was before the Milwaukee game, if I recall. And the team that was
how much better were we?
Really good. Absolutely.
I mean, how much better were we than the Minnesota game the night before or the 2 days before, where we got absolutely drilled and looked like we had no interest. And then we watched film for 20 minutes and Gary Harris and a couple of the guys spoke up and Cliff didn't spend a lot of time going over like the film against Minnesota. He just went over NBA experiences that he's had over his 30 plus years of being in the league and talked about Latrell Sprewell and Patrick Ewing and just going through, and he's done that before, obviously, but I think he just made it a point where he brought up a story about a player that was on the Knicks that struggled to stay in the league and he ended up not staying in the league. And I think he was talking to a lot of these, I mean, how many guys did we have on our roster at the end that were 10-day contracts or just signed? And we had at least 4 guys that were there for 2 weeks. And then, that probably are not going to be there next season. And who knows where they're going to be, whether they're going to be in the NBA or in the G League or in Europe. And he's just giving them his experiences about what it takes to be an NBA player and the work that it takes to be an NBA player. And then Gary spoke up and said great things about just working hard. And it really had nothing to do with the next game. It was just time that they got to spend together. And I mean, and then we got on the floor and did some things to prepare for Milwaukee and it was night and day. I mean, we lost still by 10, but it was way more competitive than the 3 nights we had before.
But think about your guy like Brazdeikis or Wagner or Thornwell. Your career path may not be in Orlando, but you get that valuable experience and that wisdom that you take with you wherever you go.
Who knows what you're going to pick up, right? I mean, who knows what you're going to pick up there that you can then turn around and use during the summer and maybe catch on somewhere else. No idea.
David, I look at this and I think the Magic finished 21-51. That's the 3rd worst record in the NBA, but they're going to have the best odds of anybody, right? Because the bottom 3 teams all have now a 52% chance at a top 4 pick and a 14% chance at the number 1 pick. So, fans wrestle with, what do? Do you make the trades? Do you move on? Do you not? And then, but in doing so, the front office makes the decision to move on from three guys that were here for quite some time, acquire young players, and in doing so, you're not going to win. You go 6-22 to close out the season. But if you're the front office, did you not accomplish your goal? You acquire young, promising players who get a chance to play, and we saw visible signs of growth, in my opinion, the last 3 weeks. And oh, by the way, the byproduct of that is you now gave yourself the best chance of anybody to have a top 4 pick, right?
Yeah. Mission accomplished. No doubt about it. A lot of young, very interesting, talented players already on the roster. You have Fultz and Isaac coming back next year. I thought RJ Hampton was really an interesting player down the stretch. Boy, we saw him do some things that can really make Magic fans excited about where his future might go. There's a lot to like about him. Cole Anthony drops 37 on the final night of the season. So clearly he's a guy that can get you points, which, that's always a great thing to have, players that can score the basketball and provide some offense. And then, with the lottery, the odds are in our favor that we get a top 4 pick. But, history tells you guys,
of course,
and we all know this, that there are players dotted throughout, especially the first half of the first round, from 1 to 15. Every year there are players that emerge as stars at some point in their career. So it would be great to get a top 4 pick. The odds are that we will get a top 4 pick. But even if not, if you get 2 lottery picks in this draft, the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th player. I mean, I know all the experts are saying that, this is a 5-player draft, but I never buy that. I just don't. I mean, I know some of those that can't miss in that top 5. Some of them, more than one, probably is going to miss. That's my opinion. I think that happens every year. There's going to be a guy 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 that nobody thinks all that much of that's going to pop as an all-star in 3 or 4 years. So I'm not all that focused really on that lottery, especially if we get 2 players in this draft. I think it's going to be you have a chance to really have 2 great pieces for the future. Hopefully it's a top 4. And if it is, then, we'll all be really excited about, because those will be the name players that, everybody around the country is talking about. But I think that we have a chance to do some things down the road with this particular draft in particular.
JT, it doesn't matter what number we pick, right? We have to pick the right guy.
Exactly.
I don't care.
Exactly.
I don't care. I don't
Correct.
care if we have the number 1 pick. I don't care if we have the number 12 pick. Because it could happen. I mean, it's happened both times now that they've switched this lottery around, right? That the year that New Orleans and Memphis got Zion Williamson and Ja Morant, they had a 7% and a 6% chance, I think it was, to get the number 1
Correct.
pick, right?
Exactly.
And then you look at last year, Charlotte had a 6% chance to get the number 1 pick. They end up number 2. They get LaMelo Ball. It doesn't. I just don't. The odds are what they are going to be, and that's all fine and good. And we could end up 1. We could end up 7. I don't care where we end up. Just pick the guy has to be the right guy. It just has to be the right player.
Yeah,
Hopefully you have 2 guys. You have 2.
Yeah.
Right?
All right.
I'm sorry.
Pick the right players.
Yeah.
Plural.
Hopefully.
Right.
Pick the right
either
players.
way, but you guys are right either way. And so, I mean, it's going to be an interesting summer for, Jeff Weltman and John Hammond and Matt Lloyd, because, you made the decision to go down this path. Now you got to make the right pick. That's what it's all about. I mean, think about it. David and I kind of talked about this in our open last night. We went through 7 players, and J.I. is the oldest guy, right, at 24, right? So you've got 7 players, 24 or under. Maybe J.I. is 23.
23, yeah.
So you've got 7 players on your roster that you've set up now. You got that are 23 and younger. And then hopefully we're adding 2 more. By all accounts, 1 through 9, 10, David, you studied this a little bit more, are all one and done guys. So we're going to add 2 19-year-olds. So, 20 years old. So it's got to be, the work has got to be put in to make sure we get the right guys to go with that. Because think about that. We'll have 9 players under the age.
That's crazy.
Wow, that is.
Jeff, you and I have talked about it. I think we've all had this conversation, but I always think about the 2014 NBA draft the three can't miss surefire all-star players
Yes,
in
exactly right.
2014. It was Wiggins, Jabari Parker, and Joel Embiid.
Right.
And Wiggins is a good player. He's a good player.
Yeah.
Jabari Parker, we saw him on two different teams this year. He's coming off major surgeries. He's working hard after the games, trying to get, in a position where he can help a decent basketball team. That was the number 2 pick in the draft. And Joel Embiid fell to number 3 into Philadelphia's lap.
Yep.
And he's had the best career of all of them.
And didn't
even,
play for 2 years.
Didn't play for 2 years.
Play for 2 years.
Exactly.
So, the can't miss label, be careful. Be careful with the one and dones. I think
Well, your
there's a lot of
MVP,
talent there for sure.
Most likely the MVP of our league, Nikola Jokic, was the 41st pick. 41st pick in the draft, the MVP, right? And you find Draymond Green in the second round. Look where Giannis was taken, and Donovan Mitchell. And you're right.
Pick the right players, Dante. Just pick
the right players.
Guy.
And I think
care where they go.
And I think it's important to, because I recently did one of these virtual meetings with Matt Lloyd, and I think and his big stress was, we get so caught up in the draft. The draft is a piece of it. The draft is a piece. Free agency is a piece. Trades are a piece. Internal development is a piece. Like, you don't get hung up on, if we don't get the guy in the top 4, if we don't get a top 4 pick, like that this is a piece. You've given yourself the best odds at potentially having the highest pick, but you still got to pick the right guy. And at the end of the day, the draft process is just a piece of the puzzle.
Well, that's going to be a major part, right? To see, because you just said how many guys are under 23 years old? 9 guys are under 23.
There's 8 guys that are 24 or younger. 8 players 24 and younger. And
Okay.
As JT mentioned, 7 of them are 23.
You're going to need to have some veteran players at the very least to teach these guys how to be pros. It's a must. You must surround these guys with, you hear guys talk about it all the time. Well, my vet was this guy and my vet was that guy. Like, we need to make sure we have 3 or 4 of those guys that can show these young players how to be pros, because otherwise, it could get wild. It could get wild down there. It really could.
Well, Jeff, you can probably talk to this as a former player, but do those veteran players, do they need to be key players on the court? I mean, do they need to be players that are getting significant minutes to get the respect of the other guys, or the young guys, or can you have a veteran that, like Udonis Haslem in Miami, seems to give them great leadership? He never plays. I mean, what kind of vets do you have to help out young guys?
Well, I think ideally, the vets have to be everyday contributors on the floor. I mean, look, we've seen this in the past when we were going through this several years ago. Remember, we brought in veteran players. Remember, we brought in Ben Gordon and we brought Luke Ridenour,
Jason Maxfield.
Channing Frye and everything. We've got to have, I think we've got to have a core group of guys. Gary Harris is going to fit this, by the way, because he will be on the floor contributing. But I think that's part of it. It has to be guys that, because listen, in the locker room, the guys that are getting the minutes, those are the guys that have the loudest voice. It takes a very special player. Udonis Haslem, because of his time in Miami and being a part of all those championship teams and his relationship with the front office, everything, he's a unique situation and has that loud voice. That one's tough, I think, to add that, because it's hard to have that loud voice if you're not an everyday contributor on the floor. So I think that, that is, as Dante said, that's a big piece, free agency, and what you put in the locker room, got a guy that everybody respects, that they can see on the floor working and contributing every day. I think that's a big piece of it. So that's those are key people, no doubt.
From a Magic perspective, from Magic history, like you can look at like an O'Donnell Foyle was a guy that gave that leadership, but didn't necessarily play ever. It's just that he was respected and a long-term veteran. So it's going to be
on every roster he was on, even at the end of his career, was still a guy that could command respect like that.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't want to minimize. It can happen. I mean, there are I mean,
It's a
Donald's still
unique
very
person.
well.
It's a unique individual.
Yeah.
A unique
He is,
individual that
but
can
I
do
think
that.
the easiest way to accomplish the goal is to get, guys
That can contribute.
And here's the thing, that will be competing with the young guys for playing time, because when you're competing against a guy day in and day out, now you're actually, you're in, like, what is he doing? I'm competing with him. What is he doing that I'm not? That he's getting rewarded with that playing time that I'm not. I want to be where he is, kind of, and the coach is picking him over me. How does that work? I don't know what that looks like, but that's the perfect example, I think, night day and night, is Kim Birch. What Kim Birch brought through his work, he earned his playing time on the floor, even ahead of Mo Bamba, right? And so, our hope is that, and from everything he said, is that Mo understood that and said, hey, I learned a lot watching Kim Birch every day on what it takes, the things he did. I need to do those things better. So those are the kind of guys I think you need competing every day with the young guys, so that the last thing you want to do is just hand a guy playing time, right? I think players develop quicker if they're competing for that time every day. You got to stay a little bit on edge.
Well, and you guys mentioned Dante Hall. I think you're exactly right. That's a guy that could, you mentioned Kem Birch. He could maybe fill that role either on this roster or another roster. I think it's important, guys, as we close this out. JT, quick rapid fire, maybe 20 to 30 seconds on these guys. One or two things that really impressed you, one or two things that they have to work on moving forward. I think it'd be very interesting for Magic fans to use your insight. And Chuma Okeke, what impressed you? And then what does he need to work on this summer?
I think Chuma, for me, it's his all-around game, his basketball IQ on both ends of the floor. And for Chuma, I would just, for him, I think it's his individual work, really honing that three-point shot and then continuing to work. How can he get to the free throw line more? Things like that, to be a little bit more consistent offensively.
And his press conferences need to get better.
I'll take that.
He was getting better as the year was going.
In press conferences.
Just
have him watch some Cole. Have him watch some Cole Anthony.
No.
Yes.
No.
And you guys jump in if there's things you see, please, by all means.
Well,
Wendell Carter, 22 years old. I think we got to say led the team in field goal percentage and rebounding here the last month. I think the last month is very difficult to truly evaluate these guys. So I think that's why it's important for you to pinpoint maybe what you see.
Well, I think the big thing for Wendell is, from all accounts, sometimes he suffers from a confidence thing, right? Like he becomes a little bit more hesitant. I think, just repetition in the gym. He has told us that he wants to extend his range on his shot. I think that's great, but not at the expense of doing what he does, which is work in the paint. He is a throwback, old school. I really like him being around the basket. But I just want him to be more confident on the floor that, go ahead and take that 15-foot shot. We need you to do that.
RJ, you guys all weigh in. RJ, what impressed you most about that youngster, and what does he need to work on?
I'm enjoying hearing Jeff. I think we need to stick with JT.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Yeah, do it.
JT's the analyst here.
Fire away, because we got
what has to say about it.
Absolutely. RJ, fire away on RJ.
Well, again, for RJ, I don't think there's a confidence issue with RJ. I think it's just for him. I really hope we have a summer league guy, because I think RJ needs to play basketball at this level. I think we know enough about him now that he's going to do the individual work. He's going to work on his shot, extend his range, get more consistent with that. But again, I think he needs to play, because he's a guy that we're going to put the ball in his hands to make plays, and he needs as many repetitions with that as he can possibly get.
Cole, would you change anything with Cole? He seems to be an incredible worker. He's not afraid of a darn thing. What do you see Cole working on this summer?
Again, Cole's another guy. I want him. Here's what I want. I want him in the gym with the coaching staff, right? Like playing summer league, going through those practices and everything, and really begin to think like they do, like a coach on the floor, really understanding where, sometimes he'd over penetrate. He was still doing that towards the end. But don't change anything with his mindset. I love the fact he isn't afraid. He's a competitor. That guy wants to win. And just for him, it becomes figuring out how to do that. And the most important thing is he can't do it all himself. He's got to figure out how to make his teammates better. Again, the only way to do that is to get on the court and play with them.
I love it. We saw that block Mo Bamba had on Jason Tatum, and you get excited thinking about that. And then I saw 11 straight blow-bys by Tyrese Maxey, and you think, okay, it's just a reminder. He's 23 years old, and they still need, again, Jeff, a guy that needs to play. What does Mo need to do?
Yeah, it's, the big thing, and Dave and I have talked about this. Sometimes it takes bigs a little bit longer, right? To, because it just does, and, for Mo, again, it's just, for me, when I listen to him talk, I think he knows what he has to do, but he's just got to figure out, I want him to get healthy, right? Like, just get healthy, be in the best condition you can possibly be coming back in. And then commit to, I'm going to run the floor. I'm going to get, I'm going to get back on defense. I'm going to be a rim runner on offense, and really put pressure on defenses and everything. We know he can do it, David, right? We pointed it out. Whenever he did it on the floor, we pointed it out. But we were also, very honest and pointed out when he didn't get back or he didn't run the floor. And I think for him, it has to start there. And to me, it's all about conditioning. Once you're in that point, because that's what we've heard is, right, he's been deprived of all this opportunity because of, whatever it was, the COVID or the injuries and everything, to get in the top physical condition. I think for him, it has to start there.
That's outstanding. Great breakdown. David, I'm going to give you Markelle, and George, I'm going to give you Isaac. But we'll close out with this, and just what you would tell fans about, I know you've seen him working, George, and we've heard great reports, but, I guess, David, realistic expectations with what Markelle is going through, the impact that he could have next year as he continues to improve here.
Well, Jeff and I were really sort of surprised at how open and honest, not that he's not always honest, but Steve Clifford was right out there with how important Markelle Fultz is to the basketball team when asked by Josh Robbins in the last week of the season, how much did you miss Markelle Fultz? What difference could it have made on this season if he had not been injured? Boy, Coach Cliff, he came right out and said it made all the difference in the world. That he's an elite talent. He is the number one pick in the draft. So that shows you how much talent the guy has. He was playing at a very high level before the injury, 8 games in. The team was functioning well under his leadership. He's a difference maker. I mean, it's all the difference in the world to have a point guard with that kind of size and that kind of ability. The only thing, as we all know, that he lacks is the deep 3-point shot, the deep ability to shoot the deep ball. But he's got pretty much everything else. And even with the mid-range jumper, he's a threat offensively because he can get to his spots and make those shots. So it's not like he can't function as a high-quality NBA point guard without the 3-point shot. I think he's going to get that. He's still young. He's 22, right? Markelle, I think, is 22 years old.
22 years old. He'll be 23 in 2 weeks. Yeah, you're right.
So he's still a very young player. We get ahead of ourselves with these guys and think they should be this or that already in their career. So yeah, he's not going to come back right away. I did an interview with Jeff Weltman before the last game with Philly, and he was making no promises on timetables for either J.I. or Markelle. But and Markelle's injury did not happen until when? January, correct?
Yeah.
So
January 6th,
so Jeff, you've said it before. It's usually 12 months, maybe 14 months. So it could be the All-Star break next year before we see him playing in a game. I know that that's probably frustrating to Magic fans, but if you do look at the calendar and do the math, it's pretty easy math to come up with. We may not see him until the All-Star break next year. So that's a little frustrating, but you got to get that recovery right too. So I can't wait to see him back on the floor. I think he's a difference maker.
Yeah, I'm David. The difference maker that he is, with all the things people talk about, the shot and everything, and that's legit, right? Like he does need to get that range, but the thing is about him is, and we've seen it, is when Markel's on the floor, he makes everybody else better, and that is such a valuable piece. Especially for that position. And when we had him on the broadcast and we asked him what he's been doing, he said he's starting to think like a coach. Oh my gosh. I said, I'm getting excited right now. My heart's starting to beat, because if you have that with his natural gifts anyway, I get excited thinking about Markel in the future.
Great point.
You want me
Great
to talk
point.
about Isaac?
Yeah. Now, Isaac,
Sorry.
what do you see with JI? That's great insight, guys.
I would agree with David where we need him healthy. We need to have him healthy. He hasn't really proven so far, unfortunately in his first 4 years in the league that he can stay healthy. And when he does, he's a difference maker for us on the floor. He's especially obviously on the defensive end. And we're going to need him to be that anchor once he is back, patrolling things down there underneath and keeping everybody connected and doing his job on the defensive end. And I thought when he played those few games in the bubble, he had developed a little bit more of an offensive game than we were used to seeing. So if he can somehow take that and bring that into the season as well, whenever, same thing as far as Markel goes, like whenever Jonathan is ready to play, and that also may not be come training camp as well.
Right.
You don't know what the timetable will be on him. But when he does, you're going to look to him to see if he can continue that offensive trend that he was going with in the bubble before he had that knee injury. And if he can somehow maybe step out to hit those corner threes at like a 35 or a 36% clip, I think that's going to be huge for the Magic. And the thing that Markel and Jonathan are going to provide that we have not had over the last few months is just a leadership within the Magic locker room, right? Like Gary Harris provides leadership, but he's relatively new to what we're doing.
Yeah.
Jonathan's been here for 4 years and Markel's been here for 3. And so like, these are guys that are vested in the Magic, right? And vested in the success of the Magic and what Steve Clifford's trying to do. And their leadership is going to be key. If a lot of these younger players are going to take a next step forward in what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go next year and the year after and the year after that, those two guys are critical to the success of where we're going to go. No pressure on those guys, but it all relies on
right.
them.
So if I'm reading between, yes, no pressure, but it's all on your shoulders. If I'm reading everything correctly, then with all the 19-year-olds, JT, that we're going to add, the 22-year-olds, maybe Markel not till the All-Star break, Jonathan Isaac, who knows when, potentially next year, a tad bumpy as well. as we try to work in all these moving parts, as we try to work this all in. Which is understandable, what you would understand.
I think, if and we're all Magic fans, right? And we're talking to our crowd, right?
Exactly, right.
Fans. And here's the deal is we've got some great, the future, right? Looks bright, but the future could be a little bit of time, right? Because it's, that we make jokes about it's a grown man's league and things like that. It really, you just don't see really, really young teams, right? Having that big success, and everything. Sure. So I think that it's going to require some patience, not just by us as fans, but, obviously from the front office, coaching staff, we've committed to this. So, we've got to be patient and see it through.
I think that's very important message there as well. Well, guys, we did it. Somehow we got through about 30 plus of these pod squads and 72 games and 72 COVID tests. And George, with all your travels and flights and Zoom calls, I don't know how we got here, but we did. Great job, everyone.
I'm not going to lie to you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, George, can I ask, do you sleep in the top bunk or the bottom bunk?
Well, this is a loft set up in my son Jim's room. He's got a little hammock here.
That's not yours. That's not your in Laura's bedroom.
No,
okay.
I'm not a fan of Hogwarts. I mean, I am a fan of the Mets and the Giants, but she wouldn't let me hang the pennants in the bedroom, in the master bedroom. So
What about turn up a little bit? She
Well,
wouldn't go for the pinata
she
hanging
didn't
from the
go for
ceiling
the
either.
pinata. No, the pinata. No, she wasn't a fan of that.
But
Or
I
the,
think
can you see the beanbag chair over there?
that's nice.
Yeah, we got it all going on here in Jim's
I
room.
didn't know if that was your bedroom or we're back in George's dorm, Stetson. I wasn't quite sure where we were.
This is exactly what it looked like back in 19.
But to answer your question, David, I think we all know George would be hoofing that up on the top bunk. I think we should be making you go up there. No question.
There's no
All right, guys. Good stuff. We appreciate it. Thanks for the laughs all year and the insight, and have a great summer. Don't be strangers. We'll talk to you soon. That'll do it for another edition of Magic Pod Squad. This podcast brought to you by Kia, official vehicle of the Orlando Magic. Have a great summer.